At a place like my company, a big corporation, you wouldn't stand a chance.
James looked down on me at our high school reunion with 50 classmates. James has always treated me as a rival for some reason. And it seems his attitude hasn't changed even now that he's over 50. Listening to his misguided comments was so embarrassing it made me cringe. It seemed like I needed to clear up this misunderstanding there and then. So which branch is it exactly?
Huh?
James, who had been looking down on me, was stunned and began to tremble as soon as he realized who I really was. My name is Michael Taylor. I'm a 52-year-old working professional. Ever since I was a child, I loved reading books, especially biographies of great figures from around the world. I wanted to make a difference in the world. Gradually, I began to think that way, and I always tried to take initiative before being asked to do something. Perhaps because of that, by the time I was in middle school, I was made captain of team activities and nominated as a class representative. However, I always made sure not to behave selfishly or order people around. Following the example of historical figures, I advanced discussions with others towards mutually agreeable solutions. This approach was well received by everyone, and I had a fun time in middle school. I've enjoyed my life through high school, college, and even after entering the workforce. But looking back now, I feel that the middle school years, which really shaped the way I live, were the most fulfilling and fun. Just last month, I received a postcard about a reunion for that middle school group. At our age, many have moved away from our hometown. I can't even remember the last time I saw my middle school friends. Excited to meet my old classmates, I didn't hesitate to RSVP by marking yes on the reply postcard and mailing it back. On the day of the reunion, I headed to the venue with an indescribable sense of anticipation. The reunion was being held at a fancy hotel, and there were already a few people at the entrance.
Is that Michael? Long time no see.
Seeing me, my classmates started to greet me one after another. I had arrived earlier than the meeting time, but it seemed almost everyone was already there. They must have been looking forward to the reunion just as much as I was. Unlike our teenage years in middle school, we have all become adults in our 50s. Everyone looked older, but I could still see the traces of the children we once were, which brought a natural smile to my face. As I sat and chatted about recent times with a classmate nearby, suddenly, I heard a loud, vulgar laugh. Turning around, there stood a man in flashy attire. He was wearing an expensive-looking suit, showing off a shiny watch from his cuffs. Puffing himself up with confidence, he surveyed the room with his arms crossed. At first, I didn't recognize him due to his arrogant demeanor, but it didn't take long to realize who he was. The latecomer was James West. He was a classmate who always picked fights with me. James might have disliked me because we were both smart. However, unlike me, who was blessed with friends, James was harsh and would attack anyone he didn't like. That's why our classmates naturally kept their distance from him. We had been having a pleasant conversation, but we inadvertently looked at each other. Then, some of my classmates stood up to avoid James. But James, seeing me, purposely approached with a smug grin.
Long time no see, Michael. You sure are dressed down, aren't you?
James, her. I didn't recognize you at first. You're wearing a snazzy suit. It suits you well. I complimented him sincerely, which seemed to please him. James then crossed his arms again and looked me up and down as if scrutinizing my outfit.
You haven't changed much since middle school. You're getting on in years. You should care more about how you dress.
James looked down on me as he continued.
Well, I guess you've lived a life where you wear cheap clothes. Your job and earnings must not amount to much. So this must be your first time having a meal in such a nice hotel. Make sure you eat plenty and go home.
Despite the exasperated looks from everyone around, James seemed oblivious. He continued to spout sarcasm without caring about the others' opinions, and I could only respond with a wry smile, as arguing back seemed petty. Eventually, James shifted his interest to discussing careers.
So what do you guys do for a living? You all look so shabby. I bet it's nothing impressive.
While asking, James didn't wait for any replies and went on to grab classmate after classmate, making wild guesses about their jobs.
You were always looking at car magazines in middle school, so you must be working at an auto repair shop now. And your family owned a farm, right? You probably couldn't find a job and ended up depending on your family.
He continued to point at classmates one by one, making arbitrary and prejudiced assumptions. Naturally, an awkward atmosphere filled the air, and nobody wanted to respond to James. Whether he was unaware of the critical atmosphere or simply chose to ignore it, James just opened his mouth wide and laughed boisterously.
Most of you are probably busy growing vegetables or taking care of animals. I'm different. I'm inherently a more intellectual person, working at a solid company.
Despite no one listening, James proudly pulled out his business card. The card he handed over with such insistence showed he was a manager at Capital Corporation. That is a local major company that deals extensively with the development and sales of precision instruments for industries and research institutions. Caught off guard by the unexpected company name, I was left speechless. Seeing my surprise, James grinned even more. Then, placing his hands on my shoulders as if he couldn't contain his joy, he began to gloat.
Surprised, but it's true. I studied hard and graduated from Harvard University, and now I'm a manager at that Capital Corporation. Where did you end up working? How much did you study after graduating from middle school?
No matter which university we graduated from or what job we have, there's no superior or inferior among people. Various jobs support each other, and that's how society functions. My tone became harsh involuntarily. It wasn't just because I felt ridiculed, but I couldn't stand how James looked down on our classmates, agriculture, and livestock farming. He seemed surprised by the sharpness of my words. James looked stunned at my sharp words, but his expression quickly twisted.
Humph. Getting all worked up in response must mean you're also doing some kind of manual labor. You were always pampered, but it seems like you didn't make any effort after middle school.
Turning his face away as if he had seen something distasteful, James deliberately shook his head from side to side.
Talking with someone at a different intellectual level is exhausting. I usually converse with my Harvard University classmates, so the content is completely different. See ya. Enjoy mingling at the bottom.
With that, James moved to a table where some women were chatting. It's a shame he spoiled the mood when we all gathered together. I apologized to my classmates, but their criticism was directed at James.
That guy has always been unpleasant, but becoming an adult only made him worse.
Indeed, James had always bragged about himself since middle school, oblivious to those around him. I thought it was just childish vanity back then, but it seems it was his true character all along. If he hasn't changed by this age, it's unlikely he'll change much in the future. As James forced his way into the circle of women, I sighed. After James left, I shifted my focus and enjoyed catching up with my classmates. Eventually, another latecomer arrived, and almost all 50 of us were gathered, officially starting the reunion. As the former class representative, I led the toast, and the meal progressed. Initially, the conversations were a bit stiff due to the long years apart, but as drinks flowed, everyone seemed to be having a great time. In middle school, during the peak of adolescence, it was impossible to have a one-on-one conversation with a girl. But now, as adults, without any awkward shyness, everyone communicated maturely. I enjoyed discussing memories and impressions from back then with several people, revealing thoughts and wishes we had secretly held back then, like how we actually felt or wished we had talked more, was inexplicably fun. Sharing these feelings after 37 years brought a unique joy. At that moment, the entrance of the venue erupted. Turning around, the last person had just arrived, and several classmates rushed over nostalgically.
June, it's June Miller, right?
Oh, how nostalgic.
June was kind and cheerful to everyone since middle school, making her the class's Madonna and a popular figure. Everyone admired her gentle personality and refined beauty. She was beloved by both boys and girls in school, and now, both men and women gathered around her in equal measure. After a while, June made her way to our table.
Great to see you today.
Likewise, it was good to see everyone again after so long. June was dressed elegantly, which highlighted her charm even more. Despite being in her 50s, she looked remarkably youthful, yet she carried a quiet composure. Her presence was captivating. During our middle school years, I, like everyone else, had admired her. In fact, she was my first crush, so seeing her at the reunion made my heart flutter.
I get held up at work today, so I was a bit late.
That's so. It's just started, so stay and enjoy till the end. During such casual exchanges, my eyes were drawn to her graceful hands. On her left hand, the ring finger was notably bare. Feeling my heart race at this unexpected sight, I hesitated about how to start the conversation. Noticing my gaze, June suddenly widened her eyes.
This is...
Just then, a familiar voice interrupted from behind.
There you are, June. Wasting your time talking to someone like Michael is just that, a waste.
Grinning, James inserted himself between us. June looked puzzled, but James, undeterred, kept talking to her.
Hanging out with Michael is boring. You've talked enough, haven't you? Come over and talk with me now.
I couldn't help but sigh as the annoying guy returned. Then James twisted his body so June couldn't see, and grimaced at me as if to say, "Scram." While it was enjoyable talking with June, we had indeed spent a considerable amount of time together at the event. June likely wanted to chat with other classmates as well. With that thought, I glanced at her briefly. She frowned in distress, but looked uncertainly between James and the table he had invited her to join. While pondering what to do, James elbowed me.
Fill up while you can. You must be leading a poor life, always eating bad food.
With that, he made the staff bring a chair and forcibly sat between June and me.
I've been in management for years now. Talented people like me rise quickly. I'm just on a different level from those working in agriculture or construction.
James was desperate to showcase his competence. June was merely nodding along to avoid disrupting the atmosphere, showing little interest. Despite this, James, fortunate to have a listener, got carried away and continued to ramble on. He only talked about himself, displaying a level of communication that was incredibly childish, making me wonder when to rescue June from this one-sided conversation. Eventually, our table's tense atmosphere seemed to attract attention as some classmates gathered around. But James, without looking back, kept directing his monologue at June alone.
By the way, I haven't told you the name of the company I work for. It's a well-known major corporation. You must have heard of it.
He paused, then cleared his throat pretentiously. Glancing smugly at me, he announced with confidence, "It's Capital Corporation, with branches nationwide."
After graduating from middle school, I went to a prestigious high school and then Harvard University, and now I'm a manager at a major corporation.
Some classmates listening from a distance let out impressed sighs. Pleased with himself, James began boasting even more. He exaggerated how first class his life was and how his role at a major corporation suited his superior abilities. In contrast, he exaggerated how much more down and out the lives of today's gathered classmates were, having only attended the same middle school as him, which soured the mood even further. As his voice grew louder, the surrounding tolerance was nearly exhausted, but James abruptly stopped. Then, turning to me, he flashed a provoking, sneering smile.
How about that? Surprise someone like me, who used to study alongside you, has climbed so high. Well, a major corporation like the one I work for is out of your league, huh?
Being looked down upon in front of 50 classmates, I felt more nostalgic than angry. Even in middle school, from math quizzes to the 50-meter dash and pay, James always tried to compete with me. But personally, I was never interested in winning or losing, considering school grades merely indicators of my learning progress, never engaging with his provocations. So, I never took the bait from James' provocations, but my classmates always got angry on my behalf. Now, as if reliving those past scenes, the classmates around James displayed faces filled with anger and dissatisfaction.
James is acting all high and mighty again. Michael hasn't done anything, but James is as persistent as ever.
Some directly spoke up to James, while others whispered among friends.
I got an earful about his job earlier too. And why is he hogging all of June's time anyway?
Faced with complaints from many classmates, James seemed to finally get irritated. Directing his anger at me was typical of him.
People's worth is determined by how much their company is willing to pay them. Just because you were popular in middle school doesn't mean it's the same when you're an adult.
Hearing James's misguided statements was so embarrassing that it made me feel embarrassed too. It seemed like I needed to clear up this misunderstanding there and then. I gestured to stop James, who was about to complain further, and opened my mouth, barely holding back laughter. So, which branch office is it exactly?
Huh?
He must have been caught off guard by the unexpected question. James stood there with his mouth agape, staring back at me blankly. The other classmates, who had been catching up with me until James arrived, began to chuckle softly, understanding the situation. But James himself couldn't grasp why our classmates were reacting this way. After a moment of stunned silence, he suddenly turned red with anger.
Which branch office or whatever doesn't matter. What's important is which company you work for. The major corporation I work for is something you could never even step foot in.
As James made his declaration, a loud burst of laughter erupted. Our classmates couldn't hold back their laughter at James's out-of-touch remarks.
What's so funny? You all must be jealous of my workplace. Or are you saying only the headquarters is prestigious and branch offices aren't?
Let's stop there. That's enough. Let's calm down.
While everyone was laughing as if they couldn't get enough, June alone spoke in a calming tone, trying to prevent any more commotion. However, it seemed James misunderstood her intention once again.
Only June gets me. Thanks for defending me. All of you are ridiculous for laughing at my competence.
Saying this, he looked desperately at June, but she wasn't addressing him. Instead, June was talking to me, who was sitting across from James.
Hey, you. Maybe it's about time you told James the truth.
Yeah, June. James looked bewildered by the exchange between June and me, his eyes darting around in confusion, clearly unable to grasp what was happening. I started to explain the situation to him carefully. I don't think only the headquarters matters. I always appreciate the work of branch office employees. Like I said earlier, work is about helping each other.
What are you getting all high and mighty about? Think you're some kind of company executive? Don't talk down to me.
James retorted angrily, but his words only made those around us laugh harder. I appreciate the efforts of everyone at the branch offices too, but having an employee with your kind of values as a manager, I might have to let the branch know.
Oh, what do you mean by let the branch know? What are you talking about?
Even after explaining, James still didn't seem to grasp reality. Seeing him argue back with a face turning red, I was utterly baffled. Having someone with your values in the company can lead to a tarnished image for the whole branch, even the entire company. Your actions could cause losses.
What do you mean tarnished image? Mocking me, huh? Why does someone as low as you get to criticize the company I work for?
James, determined not to lose, glared back. Our classmates were all enjoying the spectacle.
Go for it, James.
Some even started to cheer him on. But noticing June looking at James with pity, I began to feel sorry for him too. I hadn't expected him to liven up the reunion this much. But it was time to tell him the truth. Listen, I am the president of the company you work for.
What kind of nonsense is that? It's a huge national company. I don't know if you're dreaming, but save your sleep talking for when you're asleep.
Despite my clear explanation, James seemed completely unable to comprehend. Just when I was about to give up explaining, June addressed James. She manipulated her phone to display something on the screen, and then showed it to James.
Look at the company's homepage. See, it's right here. James, if you're so proud of the company, you better remember the face and name of the president.
June showed him her phone, which clearly displayed my photo and the name Michael Taylor. It seemed that James finally realized I was telling the truth. His face turned pale, and he began to tremble all over.
No way. I really didn't know.
He must have recalled all the terrible things he had said to me up until then. Suddenly, he started to laugh ingratiatingly and switched to a much softer tone.
Maybe I went a bit too far, but you'll forgive me, right? We were good friends, weren't we?
It's not about forgiving or not, James. It's about the attitude of looking down on people that's not right. Changing your behavior just because you found out I'm the president is exactly what's wrong. Despite my explanation, James continued to grin and offer a superficial apology, repeating, "My bad." Realizing he wasn't understanding at all, I sighed deeply. Anyway, I'll be sure to report what I saw and heard today to the branch office. If you are serious about your work, there shouldn't be any problems.
I always work seriously. You don't have to worry about me, Mr. President.
James suddenly straightened up and addressed me formally. His drastic change in demeanor only confirmed that he really didn't get it. I was trying to say that judging people by their job or using formal language just because someone is the president isn't right. If he can't understand this, then I have nothing more to say to him. Thinking it was unfair to the others to continue this uncomfortable atmosphere, I decided to leave. June tried to follow me, but seeing this, James raised his voice again.
Are you trying to show off being a big company's president and take June with you?
Confused by his words, I stopped, but James turned his face and then addressed June directly.
June, just because you find out Michael is the president doesn't mean you should get close to him. Isn't it about who people are on the inside, not their status or money?
James, who had just been bragging about his position and income as a division manager of a large company, was now arguing the exact opposite. Everyone present was bewildered by his behavior. But June, directly addressed, responded seriously.
I wasn't talking to him just because he's the president of a big company. Today is a reunion. and I wanted to talk with everyone as classmates.
Voices of agreement rose from the other classmates who were listening. However, James shook his head as if to dismiss the surrounding voices and stared intently at June's hand. Then, noticing her ringless left ring finger, he smirked.
So, you'll talk to me too, right, June? You're not married now, are you? If it's really not about status or income, why not go out with me?
Though James was also single, it seemed inappropriate for him to ask her out. Just as I was about to intervene, to my surprise, June firmly rejected him.
Choosing you as a partner would be unthinkable, James. I can't see myself being happy with someone who judges people's worth by their job or income like you do.
I almost burst out laughing at her clear refusal. Yet, even after such a firm rejection, James persisted.
If you say you don't judge by job or income, then all the more reason you should come with me. If you still choose Michael, then maybe you're the one overly concerned with jobs and wealth.
I have a clear reason. Whatever your misunderstanding, Michael Taylor is my husband.
Upon hearing that declaration, James's mouth fell open and he froze, unable to move.
But you're not wearing a wedding ring.
I've been helping my husband at the factory since we were young, so I got into the habit of keeping my ring at home.
As June looked at me, I nodded. That's right. I was actually surprised you didn't wear it today.
It's our precious ring, so it's kept as a decoration.
June blushed as she replied, in moments like this, no matter how old we get, she always seems so endearing. June and I exchanged smiles. But James, unable to accept this, spoke up again.
That's a lie. You two are just messing with me. If you're really married, why are you acting so formal with each other?
Just because we're close doesn't mean we can't be respectful. To me, June will always be someone very important, which is why I interact with her this way, as if to prove my words. June happily took my hand. Seeing this, James growled in frustration.
But I'm not losing either. I wouldn't make you struggle if we were together.
But James, you said you bought your clothes and car all on credit, right? And you keep the monthly payments as low as possible. I just don't feel I can be happy with someone who does that.
June said this apologetically yet firmly.
What's wrong with keeping the payment amount minimal? I'm making my payments just fine, so there's no problem. Besides, no matter how much I buy, the monthly payment amount stays the same, which is beneficial.
No, keeping your monthly payments minimal even as your debt increases means you'll never really reduce the total amount of your debt. You'll just keep paying interest indefinitely.
It seemed James was caught up in the immediate relief of manageable monthly payments, not realizing how much he would end up paying in total. James was paying a fixed amount each month, without knowing how much he was being charged in fees, or when he would actually be able to pay it all off.
Our values about money are different, James. You should find someone who shares your views.
Rejected by June, James understandably looked downcast and dejected. Feeling sorry for him, I couldn't help but speak up. Besides, June is happy with me. Look for someone else who's single. You're sure to find someone good. I meant to encourage him sincerely. But it seemed James took it the wrong way. He looked at me with resentful eyes and slowly began to tear up.
You've taken not just my job, but my true love as well. Go away.
With that, he shouted and, contrary to his words, he was the one who ran off. Thus, June, myself, and the rest of our classmates finally settled down and resumed the reunion. We spent an enjoyable night together. A few days after the reunion, holding the business card James had given me, I decided to inquire at the branch he worked for. As expected, it turned out that James was treating his subordinates, who were lower in position, with a high-handed attitude daily. I immediately contacted HR to start an investigation into the workplace dynamics and the environment of his department. As a result, it became clear that not only was the workplace atmosphere deteriorating because of James, but he was also behaving arrogantly towards clients. While he treated big clients of the corporation with utmost respect, he was rude to smaller, new clients. More digging only brought up more negative reports. With a heavy heart, I directed that James be transferred to another department. I hoped he would return to his roots and remember what sincere work attitude meant. However, the outcome was disappointing. Unable to forget his former glory as a manager, James resisted the younger supervisors and continued his rude behavior towards clients, leading to his isolation at work. Eventually, a few months later, he resigned on his own. After quitting his job, he fell behind on his loan payments, and within months his house and car were repossessed. James then disappeared somewhere, and now it seems no one knows what he is doing. As for me, I continue to lead a busy life at work and at home. The reunion sparked renewed communication with my local friends. Now, we're planning to have a big reunion when everyone turns 60. I plan to attend it with my beloved wife, June. Until the day we all meet again in good health, I keep working hard every day